Okay, how about if we get started, Chase?
Works for me. All yours, Doug.
Great. Welcome, everyone, to the first in a series of Frontline Conversations sponsored by Leadership Greater Washington to talk to people who are really dealing with the daily impact of COVID-19 and how they're responding to it. So we're thrilled to have as our first guest, Cathy Hollinger, the president of the Restaurant Association of Metropolitan Washington. You know, when you think of COVID-19 and its impact, it's the hospitality industry, it's the restaurant industry, the hotels, theme parks, things like that have really been devastated. So we're very pleased to have Cathy with us. So Cathy, good afternoon to you. Glad you're with us.
Good afternoon. It's so nice to see your face.
Yeah, I miss you. I miss being with you. So we'll
I miss you too.
do that sometime, huh? So tell us about how's this affecting you personally?
Well, I will say that I'm so grateful. I'm healthy. Tony's healthy. My son is healthy. And in times like this, that's what is most important. I'm lucky because they are so easy, and I have a wonderful industry that I represent, but they're very high need right now. So I think as we all are trying to figure out this new normal and working from home, we're also trying to figure out how we're doing the proper self-care to get through crisis mode.
So tell me a little bit about your office when you first shut down or started working from home, how that's working. What's a typical day like for you today?
Yes, I remember, Doug, right before we started working from home, I think it was within hours, you and I were on the phone, and I was asking you how you are dealing with it in your organization, with your team. But pretty quickly, we developed a plan. We got people set up on remote work. And I want to say that since March 15th, we were probably a few days after others because we're already a small team. We started the remote work plan, and it had its kinks early on, and we worked through it. And now I will say the only challenge is that we are probably working all the time. So it's trying to find a healthy demarcation point so that we are not working around the clock, as we have an industry that does work around the clock.
So what's a typical day like for you nowadays?
So my day consists of, starting the day and ending the day with an all-team call. And just looking at that day, as we have to somewhat be day to day in this moment. There's very little luxury around planning, but then the day is really spent talking to media, talking to restaurant operators, talking to regional elected officials, and then talking to my counterparts across the country who are leading state restaurant associations to gauge where they are and what the proper discussions need to be, whether they are on the legislative front with relief, on a federal level, regionally, or really, believe it or not, as we are already thinking about the ramp-up period and what that may look like and the phases around that. So days are very full, a lot of phone calls, a lot of Zooming, which, look, we're all pros now, right?
Are you zoomed out yet?
I'm not zoomed out yet, but I'm getting zoomed out a little bit. So, but it's a great way to connect with people. I think it's another way that we're all trying to rediscover this new normal, right?
Yep. So talk about the restaurant industry sort of in general, then we'll get down into some specifics, but
sure.
Tell us sort of how things have evolved from beginning to end.
So, the first week, it was very knee-jerk. Mandates across the region were changing rapidly, and there was a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of confusion for our restaurants to know what they are allowed to do and what they are not allowed to do. They spent a lot of time, and we spent a lot of time with them trying to figure out how they are going to modify their business model to be able to operate in this curbside pickup and delivery only model. And for our restaurants, looking around the region, we're 96% independently operated and owned. And our restaurants have the ability to do delivery and takeout, but many of them were not designed or opened up to consider that as the only model. So outside of the heart-wrenching conversations that they had to have with their staff as they were letting people go, we think there are about 25,000 food service employees within our industry of restaurants who have either been furloughed or let go since this started March 13th. And they had to quickly move to a skeletal crew to figure out how they were going to accommodate if they chose to be open. And we have 60% of our restaurant community that is open under this modified operating model of curbside pickup and delivery. And we have 40% who have decided to temporarily close their doors.
So 40% of the restaurants in this region have shut down for the duration, hopefully. I mean, hopefully they'll open up when things get better, but some of them probably won't. I mean, what are you hearing from those members who have shut down?
Yeah, I think that, you know, of that 40%, there was the thinking of one group, of one subset, that the smarter business decision right now based on their restaurant model is to mitigate costs and temporarily shut down to figure out how they can save resources, gain resources. Hopefully relief will come down the pike to be able to reopen. What I will say is that the intention is that everyone will reopen, but we are also considering that maybe 20% of that 40% will look different as they choose to reopen, meaning they will change their business model. They will maybe gear up over this time to become takeout and delivery only as they're ramping up to be the full service operators that they were designed to be as they opened initially.
And in those restaurants that have closed, the employees were laid off, furloughed? Do they get any benefits? What's the normal?
Yeah, the majority of them were laid off.
Wow.
So that they could qualify for unemployment insurance benefits. And that's been a very slow process. But I will say, Doug, the two things that were communicated as immediate needs from restaurant owners and operators were immediate access to cash to sustain their operation and the ability to make sure their employees are taken care of. So somewhat in the reverse order, we worked very hard to make sure that there was messaging around our restaurants want to make sure that as they have laid off 92% of their workforce, that their employees will be taken care of. And look, in DC, DOES has never been more inundated, right? So everyone's trying to be patient, trying to be kind as we navigate a very challenging situation, but we are starting to hear that people are getting paid. And once the federal relief increased for the unemployed, it was a much better formula. It's just pushing people through the process and making sure that they are actually receiving checks.
So you said 92% of the employees have been laid off. That's of all of the restaurants.
Right.
So even the ones that are open laid off the vast majority of their employees.
Right.
You just have that skeletal crew.
That's right. And it's usually the owner, the general manager, and 2 to 3 more people. I mean, you're really looking at maybe under 8. And then as pickup and delivery has increased for operators on some level, that's where it's tricky. They can't really hire more people without being mindful of the social distancing that needs to also be taken into account for their restaurant.
Now there's a small business administration emergency loan fund they have like $300 billion worth of applications for. They have $10 billion worth of dollars to hand out. So everything's sort of held up there. That was supposed to be a quick cash to businesses. So Congress hopefully is working that out, and people applying for unemployment. You said they're starting to see the checks.
They're starting to see those checks with SBA. There's the EIDL program and there's the PPP program. And
how does PPP work? This is the Paycheck Protection Program. If you've laid off all these employees, how do you qualify for that program? Because you're supposed to keep people hired.
Yes. So my smile is a smile of anxiety right now. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, which the intention was very good, but it doesn't work. So I think that right now we're in what, the nation calls the relief 3.5, where it's around these quick fixes. Our understanding is the quick fix still does not address this entire audience of the restaurant industry across the country. The look back period doesn't work. The forgiveness piece does not work, because if you on March 13th decided that you were going to lay off 92% of your employees, who are you forgiving? Like, what funds are you actually forgiving, where the loan becomes forgiven versus a typical loan? So we're hopeful. We have partners on the national level. We have other states that we're working with to push this and fix it. But Doug, it's super challenging, very frustrating, and very slow moving. So we're looking at regional relief right now to make sure that people can hole patch until they get the bigger relief.
So the district, Montgomery County, some of the other counties have their own relief programs that seem to be helping, or hopefully are helping.
Or hopefully helping.
The 92%, that equates to 25,000 people. Is that the right number?
About 25,000 people. I think it's more. This is based on surveying that we do pretty regularly. And we gather tons of information. I mean, every week we want to know who's decided to reopen that week, even in a modified form. We've seen that of the 40% that closed, maybe of that group, 2 to 3% decide to reopen just to be able to give this a try. But of course, they're only doing it knowing that they want to keep their customers in mind from a health standpoint, and they also want to keep their employees protected and in mind. So it takes a lot to go into thinking about how to redo your business model in this new normal of business.
Well, let's talk about that for a little bit. So you said 60% of the restaurants are still open. They've had to modify to delivery or to go.
Yeah.
How hard's that been for them? And other than laying off a lot of employees, but the adjustments for them to do that, what are you hearing about from the chefs and the owners about that?
Yeah, it's funny. And we see this for those who are on social media, you see this often, but for our industry, people are feeling like, every day is Groundhog Day, right? You wake up, you're kind of doing it all over again. The restaurants, they're going in, they're preparing meals, and they're delivering their output in terms of energy, and what they're expending is incredibly high. But what they are actually generating in terms of revenue coming in, they're seeing anywhere from 80 to 90% decrease in sales. So they are just looking to keep things afloat in a manner that works. But we're seeing, we're seeing people be incredibly innovative and creative. I mean, the one thing I will say is, on a dime, they changed their entire business model. They have incredible resilience, and they have done anything and everything from rethinking their footprint within their restaurant to become grocery stores and markets.
Yes, Stuart Freudberg had a question on that about, we're seeing now a lot of these, Stuart the Palm, Founding Farmers, others are turning to markets and restaurants and selling not just food items, but grocery items, toilet paper, things like that. Is the grocery, the supermarket industry a little upset about that, or are people sort of understanding of what's going on? Or
it's
working as a market.
It's interesting. So we have not heard pushback from grocery stores or retail. We have not heard that. What we have heard, and it's very important to keep in mind and remember, is that restaurant operators and their employees right now, they are considered essential employees and employers, and they are being asked to be additional food sources in neighborhoods across the region. And that is exactly what they are doing. with these markets or with these packaged family meals where you come in to do curbside pickup or they do delivery, where it lasts you a week. It's a week of prepared meals and food. And everyone is trying to figure out their way of navigating this space, but it is another option for people who may not feel as comfortable going to a large grocery store. There is another food source for them, particularly if they're in a livable, walkable community, to go to a restaurant that has been transformed and repurposed into a market. So we have not heard pushback. We have heard applause for restaurants thinking a little bit outside the box to be able to meet the needs of a very, very different need base right now.
You know, I went into a deli in Rockville recently, and you know, obviously everybody's 6 feet apart and it's all to go. But they had sort of shifted their whole sit-down operation aside, and they had a wall full of toilet paper, latex gloves, sort of cleaners, things like that, at very reasonable prices. That's the first time we sort of saw somebody doing a market in the sort of for non-food things. But it made a lot of sense, and it was like, well, you know, I can't find it anywhere else, and it costs a fortune if I do find it. Why not come here? So I think that's. Are you hearing success from these? So are they selling products? Are they?
Yes, they're selling products. You have Founding Farmers who is doing that. So not only do they have the grocer items and the prepared meal items, but they also have the provisional items as well and supplies. And you go in, if you were to go to their website, you go in and you add to your cart whatever you may need, whether it's paper towels, toilet paper, bottled water. Then you have, you know, what's also interesting is you have distillers who are changing their entire business models, and they are creating sanitizing products. So the demand is high, and these are just additional outlets to get those kind of supplies. And they are finding a lot of success in that, these operators who are doing that. You have operators at the wharf doing that. You have operators in the suburbs doing that. And they are seeing that diversifying what they're offering has been very successful for them.
You mentioned the wharf. There was an issue with some of the fish stands down there and people congregating. What's the, you know, the latest on that and what's happened?
Yes, that was very frustrating. I think that people understand that they can still go outside and get fresh air, and they want to do that, and God bless them for doing that. But to do it in a way where you are socially gathering with a lot of other people, I know the mayor was very frustrated by that, as she should be, because that is exactly what we are not to be doing. But it also puts a lot of people who are considered essential employees and employers at risk, knowing that they are trying to provide a service, understanding that everybody is practicing social distancing and mandates as they have been laid out across the region. So that was not a good look, I think, for anyone. And as the weather gets better, we're going to see that happening, and we have to be mindful of what we need to be doing and what role we need to be playing.
So are you hearing more restaurants having tried the to-go and the delivery and then just stopping? So First Watch, for example, did the to-go for a while, and then they just announced they're closing all of their stores until this thing gets resolved. So are you, what's the trend in that in the restaurants around here?
I think that there are restaurants that as they opened up in their business model, they incorporated a very savvy to-go and delivery model. They are faring better, as well as neighborhood restaurants who may not be fast casual and are full service restaurants that made that transition, and they pivoted very well, and they're faring better again because they are walkable, livable neighborhoods. There are definitely a handful of people every week, and they decide to, I don't know that I can do this more than another couple of weeks, and they have to choose to temporarily close until either relief comes down the pike and they have some cash on hand, or we are at a different stage of this where restrictions are lifted slightly.
So let's shift into that for a little bit. Glenn Howard has a question of, even after restaurants reopen for sit-down guests, are people going to be comfortable going to them, much less to theaters or sporting events, and comfortable sitting near people for hours at a time? How many, and if the restaurants have to do that, have to split their tables apart, how many can do that profitably? I mean, you're reducing the number of patrons you can have at any one time. So let's look at the future a little bit of when we start to come out of this and what that's going to look like for your industry.
Yes, I think that there are, there are going to be 3 phases, at least from an industry standpoint, as we look at what recovery looks like. And this is recovery outside of whatever marketing and relief comes down the pike. This is just recovery of an industry. I think there's this restrictive phase, which we're in right now, but then there's like the new defined restrictive. What does that mean? There's this graduated stage and there's an eased stage. I would say that it will be very, very hard for restaurants to ease into lifted restrictions, given the business model may not make sense for them to pull in more employees to serve 20 customers in a restaurant versus what they may be used to serving, which is 50 or 60. There are going to be more than a handful. Half of the industry is going to decide that they're going to wait until they can operate in an 80% manner versus a restrictive layered manner. I think people—
So you're saying half of the restaurants will wait.
I think they will wait.
Almost be at full speed.
I think they're going to have to wait because I don't know that they will have the relief in place or the cash in hand to absorb the cost of what it means to run a restaurant in an in-between kind of way. Right now, they're at their bare bones. If they add to that where full service is allowed, but temperatures are being taken at the door, only 10 to 15 people can sit in the restaurant, you have to wonder if that's a model that can be sustained versus waiting until there is more of a majority normal happening where people are coming out and people are allowed to come out. So this is, these are conversations that on one hand, I will say candidly, I enjoy having the recovery conversations to get out of the Groundhog Day conversations of every day our industry is having to operate this way. But all of this has to be coordinated with the regional leaders. All of it has to be coordinated with mandates that are coming out, and of course with science and numbers. So that's a much bigger effort that requires a lot of other people to push out the trust that we have to build with our communities as people are coming out and assuming a fraction of what the normal was before March 13th.
And the worry is that won't happen until there's a vaccine out and readily available, which could be some time. So in terms of the to-go stuff today, there's a question about people are nervous about food handling, getting the coronavirus through the food processing, cooking, delivery. What are you all saying about that?
I mean, what we say is what the CDC has said. There is absolutely no scientific evidence suggesting that this virus is shared through foodborne contact at all. And I think that one thing that people may not know if they are not a part of our industry, we have incredibly high health protocol standards as an industry. I mean, we have to follow SurfSafe guidance, which is national accredited programming and training, whether it's food handling or whether it's for a manager, operator, or owner. So this is decades and decades of protocol that restaurants have had to take. And knowing that that's the baseline, and knowing that there is only an elevated and increased practice in place right now, it's important for people to know. Restaurants are providing delivery and pickup in a very little to no contact way to make it incredibly comfortable, but also safe for customers to come and pick up their food, or as delivery drivers are delivering that food. So candidly, I am picking up and getting delivery every single day, partly because it is my industry and I want to support them, but also because I have very little time to think about cooking for my poor family that doesn't get a home cooked meal. But I will say that that is not something that crosses my mind, as I also see what they are doing with their practices and how aware they are for the diner and for employees.
So another question about, you mentioned that some restaurants will do a week's worth of meals. How do we find out who they are and how do we order from them and all that?
Yes, so we have the Restaurant Association, we have gathered over 350, 400 operators and what they are doing, whether it's takeout, delivery, provisional supplies, markets, weekly meals, packaged meals, family meals. So if you go to ramw.org, we have a link that has a listing of all those restaurants across the region who are doing more unique offerings, but also daily offerings around curbside pickup and delivery.
Is there any, another question, is there any thought of giving restaurant workers sort of priority in terms of antibody testing or whatever, or getting a vaccine or whatever, so people will feel safe as they come into the restaurants? Are people talking about that at all?
People are talking about it.
I know they're talking about it for first responders and healthcare workers. Are they talking about it for your industry as well?
I think they should be talking about it. If we are also considered essential employees and employers, I think all essential should be in that category. Of course, there are probably some that need to be prioritized, but we have talked about it just as an industry here, even if you want to look at Washington, D.C., to also consider who can come back to work. And as we are building our workforce back up, we think that is going to be critical to create more public trust, but also to be able to better understand who may be infected and who may not be infected. So we're talking about it. We need our health officials to talk about it as well.
So we had a post from Edwin Washington that talked about a local restaurant in his neighborhood that did a grab and go promotion, got a local known chef to package 3 great meals, and it has increased their patronage. They got new customers from it. They're keeping their current customers. So that's a nice little success story.
Wonderful.
How about landlords? What are you hearing about rent and people being able to keep the space that they're in with no revenue coming in?
So what I'm hearing and what we're sharing are probably 2 different things. What we're hearing is they can't pay rent. We're definitely hearing they can't pay rent. And what we are recommending is that it's a complex issue, and I don't know that there is a cure-all policy, given everyone needs to be paid in the environment that we're in. Whether it's through a relief effort or whether it's just a business sustaining themselves. We are definitely encouraging that our restaurants have conversations. First, they need to have the conversation with their landlords, because we are hearing from more and more landlords that they are willing to work something out and put them on a plan that would work for them, whether it's 50% of their rent this month, knowing that 4 months from now, they will pay 150%. That's not ideal, but the reality is that everyone knows that they have to be at the table to figure out what the solution is to this. So first and foremost, we're encouraging people to talk to their landlords, figure out their own plan, as we are trying to look at this on a national level to understand what relief could look like, knowing that people are not in a position, small businesses, to pay their rent.
So Bruce Goodberg's got a comment of Restaurant Week started after 9/11. are you looking at some new kind of promotion once we're recovered and we can open up fully again?
We are. Bruce, I think you knew that from someone, but we are. Restaurant Week is typically, you're right, it started after 9/11. It was in January and August. Typically, the cycle is January and August. And we are looking to rethink what our Restaurant Week would look like. It's August would be an ideal time to still do it, given where we are today. We're in April. But we are working with partners across the region, tourism boards, various private sector partners who want to be a part of being supportive of the community, to think about how we can push this out in a very strong dine out DC, Maryland, Virginia kind of way, with the same tenets of what Restaurant Week was first created on.
How about some of the chefs or the restaurant owners who have gone kind of above and beyond in terms of feeding others? I know there's some great success stories out there, or great, just great stories from these people in terms of helping others. Why don't you go through a few of those with us?
Yes, I think that one thing that we talked about a little bit earlier is this idea of resilience and creativity and innovation. And at the end of the day, restaurants are incredibly purpose-driven. So they're all trying to find their way to not only run a business in a modified way, but to also really think about how they can be helpful in their communities. You have Pizzeria Paradiso, Ruth Gresser. Hopefully you've been to some of her places, but she is providing 10,000 pizzas, partnering with Real Food for Kids and donating them over 10 weeks to those in need. And then you have, on our foundation side, we're working with Hook Hall, which is Hook Hall Helps. And Doug, you were so gracious in how you helped partner with us on that and donate Girl Scout cookies. We always hand out Girl Scout cookies at the end of our awards dinner every year. I remember that.
We ordered 500 boxes for this year's dinner. We had to postpone it, and we had 500 boxes of Girl Scout cookies. So we connected with Cathy and gave them to you all, to Hook Hall, to be part of what, Cathy?
So this is a worker relief fund, and we are working with Hook Hall to provide meals to those who have been furloughed or laid off within the hospitality industry. As the program grows, that audience will also grow in terms of who we are providing meals for. But let me tell you how it works. So every day there is a restaurant or restaurants who sign up to be meal providers for minimum 250 meals. So they make 250 meals. It is delivered to Hook Hall, and then Hook Hall is distributing at a minimum 250 to 500 meals a day. As the support grows, that number will grow as well. But the way that we wanted to make sure it somewhat supported this micro ecosystem is, as a restaurant chooses to be a community kitchen and provide those meals, they are also given some modest financial relief, where $5 per meal is given back front to be able to cover some of the costs around the food that they have to purchase to make those meals. And you can imagine restaurants are suffering a lot, but food suppliers are suffering significantly because their sales have dropped tremendously. So to be able to have a little bit of funding where money goes back to the restaurant, who is then providing the meals for the workers, and being able to pay modestly the food supplier to give them that ingredient, it creates some level of very small community support that is a circle flow chart of revenue that kind of comes back to the operator and the food supplier. But Hook Hall has been incredibly successful. And then you have Jose Andres, who is just doing all things for all people in a magnificent way. we have so many people who are doing so many things. Andy Shalal, I believe Andy and Savile Food Service, one of our food providers that we work with a lot, they are taking food out to a restaurant and then providing meals and using that restaurant as a site. We have so many restaurants doing amazing things, whether it's providing meals to first responders or sending meals to restaurants and senior centers. I mean, you really see the purpose-driven thought leadership coming from this industry, and it's heartwarming.
But talk about Jose for a bit. He's turned National Park into a kitchen, basically.
Yeah.
Doing thousands of meals there, is that right?
Thousands of meals, and he's going everywhere. He's in DC, he's in New York. I can't even keep up with Jose where he is right now, but he really activated his entire team to pivot into a service-oriented meal providing system. And he's remarkable. And he is a model that everyone is trying to mirror on a very hyper-local level. And whether you see restaurants with their various GoFundMe measures, or you see restaurants that are selling pasta sauce made by the chef, but every dollar of that sale goes to support 3 employees that they have at their restaurant, people are really thinking outside the box to sustain their operation, but also to be of service to a high-need community of those in need right now.
So looking to the future, in your discussions, you talked about maybe August doing Restaurant Week or something like that. Where do you think we'll be in August?
So what's the date today, Doug?
Tax Day, April 15th.
April 15th. So what I believe is that I think the mayor Bowser just today extended the order to mid-May, where
stay-at-home order.
Stay-at-home order. So we will revisit that.
Governor Northam is supposed to be doing something today as well, extending the day. So
I think that we will see what we have in place will be in place through mid-May. I think that we will hopefully see provisions lifted lightly towards the end of May, early June. That is ambitious, but I believe that for our industry, who is already somewhat open, it's really a matter of what we may look like in early June versus mid-April. The reality is that we are going to see more decisions needing to be made by restaurant owners, whether they are going to be able to sustain another 6-week period, particularly if relief isn't coming in the form that they need it to come in. I do think that the larger gatherings, that's probably going to be in place for quite some time, but I think that people will be able to leave their homes in some shape, form, or fashion in the summer. But you know, Doug, it's so hard to guess, and it's so hard to create any planning around what we may think will be lifted restrictions when there's so many other things and so many other factors at play, like people leaving their homes. It does very little for us as an industry to lift restrictions if people can't leave their homes. So we remain hopeful that it's sooner than later.
I think that, I mean, as we've seen, the real challenge is the testing. We are not doing, we're actually slowing up on testing now. We're not doing the testing needed to convince the public things are going well. You don't have the antibody stuff, or you don't have the contact tracing that we need to do. It's just, we're not organized the way we should be. And
Yeah.
That's a real shame. And I think that's going to delay things quite a bit and cost lives.
Yes, I agree. And it's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I think more than ever, coordinated efforts across industries, governments, it's going to be critical, especially for our region.
Cathy, we've been on for about 45 minutes, close to that. Let's sort of wrap up with, how do we help? How can we help you all? I mean,
Yes.
you just described an industry that's been decimated, not just here in the region, but across the country, probably across the world. And people have lost jobs. They're trying to get unemployment. They have no health insurance in a time when everyone needs it. And what can we do to help you all, help your industry through these tough times, other than going out and buying meals from them, which I'm doing a lot of as well. So.
Yes, I think that it goes without saying, yes. If you're planning your week of meals, think about one week where, in addition to grocery store items that you're getting, you're going to one of the restaurants who are also providing fresh produce and grocer items and provisional items. I think that is very helpful, but I also would say that you'll probably be delighted to see what they're offering. They're offering a lot of wonderful things that you would probably already order through your various Instacart delivery orders or Peapod and others. So I would say that you should do that as you're thinking about, I know I have to feed my family or myself for 7 days. One of those days I'm going to think about getting delivery. I would also say that, there are a lot of legislative things in advocacy that people can do in terms of encouraging Congress to offer the kind of relief that works for restaurants, particularly knowing that this is a truly beloved industry. People love their neighborhood restaurants. They have friends who are in the industry. LGW has a lot of restaurant operators who are part of their industry. So if you have friends in Congress, tell them to make the relief package work for restaurants as well. And then I would say to support, as you can, these worker relief funds. Knowing that this is going to be a longer road for workers and employees, to find ways to support a restaurant who is directly supporting worker relief fund measures. So to give a contribution where that money is going directly to providing meals for those who have been furloughed or let go. That is incredibly helpful. And I'm hoping that Lexi and my team shared some of the links and resources of ways that the LGW community can support and help in that way, because we want to take care of our employees, our workers, and our operators. I think that is an easy way through the RAMW Call Helps Worker Relief Fund. So I do hope people will look there to support. And Doug, if I could say one more thing.
Yeah.
Much of our day is about gathering resources to be able to provide our restaurants with ways in which they can go get relief across the region and in ways that they wouldn't necessarily imagine. And we have spent a lot of time putting those guides together and putting those links together. So if you are a small business, regardless of whether you are a restaurant, a lot of those resources could probably apply to you as well. To take a look, we have that all on our website, ramw.org. And I think it's /resources. Or /. I always get those confused, but you'll see once you go to the website, we have a lot of resources and guidance for small business operators in general, regardless of what industry you're in.
So Chase has put up on the screen the resources and all the links to all of the places to look if you want to help in this particular industry and help these workers. So we're very grateful to Cathy for looking at that. Glenn Howard did say that if we had representation, DC had representation in Congress, that they'd certainly talk to the congressional people, but we don't. So
Absolutely, and we would get more relief than what we are getting as a city as well.
And then another question about, in restaurants who are now doing groceries, doing markets, can they accept SNAP benefits during this? Is there any way to look at that, to have that available?
I do not know the answer to that, but I will say that that question surprisingly has never been asked. I would want to say no, only because it has not come up, but I would be very curious to find out myself, as I will.
Well, Cathy, thank you very much. This has really been incredible. It's a great way to start this Frontline Conversation series. I miss you terribly. I am wearing a tie today for the first time in 5 weeks, only for you, Cathy, I want you to know.
I brushed my hair for you.
Any final words for us, Cathy?
No, I'm really grateful to be a part of this community. I think that the first couple of weeks we were so panicked, and everybody in all industries were trying to figure out what they need to do to protect themselves, protect their employees, protect their businesses. And I will say that it's delightful to be able to be a part of a great-minded community to share some of what we are going through, but also to know that there's this great network out there of wonderful leaders and people like you. So I thank you for having me.
Well, you're such a valued member for LGW and your support. You're doing a virtual member dinner on April 30th, which I will be part of.
I love that.
And then all the work you do every year for awards dinner and getting us some great things to hand out to people. So, Cathy, we miss you. Thank you so much for this, and we will hopefully see you soon. Thanks everybody. And we're getting a lot of kudos from people on the chat. So, Cathy, just want you to
love kudos.
People are congratulating you quite a bit. So, thank you very much. And we're going to share the slide, the resource links slide with everybody who attended this. So we're going to send that out to you, and we're going to send out a little survey for you to do, giving some comments on how this went. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate it. Cathy, thank you. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. You do too. Happy tax day. Happy no tax day.
Thank you, Cathy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.